That is all true. But what we put together here this morning was a panel of three gentlemen who are very much experts and entrepreneurs in the shale industry. And you're welcome to, actually, they're not going to do a formal presentation, but we're going to call on them every time I get stuck. Because as director of the chamber, we run 600 companies, 21,000 readers, and 6,000 in our newsletter. We cover shale, everything from movie theaters to Shale to hotels to you name it, we do it. So these are our experts. And starting from left to right, my left would be Ron. And we're going to interrupt him while he's eating. Ron Pettengill is a consultant in shale environment, and specifically he's worked as a officer in quite a few companies. Most recently was Epiphany, which is a company that takes solar and some other energies and changes water into a more purified state. He can talk a little about that. We have next with us is Bart Hyita, and he is president of Hyita Corporation. His background is maybe 10, 12, 15, 20 years with Consol Energy as COO, and started his own company recently, and they are in the consulting aspect of the business. So if you're looking for a consultant, a specialist, that's your man. The next man over is Karl Skrypak, and Karl holds two levels of distinction. One is that he is a vice president of the same company, Hyita, and also a lawyer, and worked with Consol Energy for about 30 years. And he was senior law with Consol, and his job was to put out fires. And he did a great job with that. But more importantly, he's on the Southpointe Chamber of Commerce board, okay, which eclipses any of the past accomplishments, including Yale University. Yeah. So on his epitaph, or when he passes away, that will be the headline. Hopefully it's before me, so I can write it for you, okay? That'll work. So we're going to start off with just a few comments. There are 5 TVs in case you're nearsighted or farsighted. I think you'll be able to find something. First of all, Southpointe is 3 miles long. You drove into here. Did you get a chance to drive around, or just drove straight to here? Straight to here? Okay, later on we can go for a little tour of Southpointe. It's about close to 900 acres. There are 300 companies in Southpointe, and I'm sorry, I move around a lot for our cameraman. It drives him nuts. But on page 30-something in your magazine that we have given each of you, actually page 28, are the listing of all the companies in Southpointe in alphabetical order. There are 300 companies in Southpointe. Of the 300 companies, about 75 are Shell-related companies. A lot of them, like Consol Energy, Range Resources, Rex, who else is in here? Rice, Noble Energy, are large billion-dollar companies that are in here, maybe 5 to 10 that are in that ranking. Then you have companies that are support companies. And when we say support, it could be anything from construction companies, water haulers, insurance companies, lawyers, even caterers actually are in the Shell business, because a lot of them wouldn't have existed if it weren't for the Shell industry, because guess what? The guys out in the field need to eat. And of course, you start a catering company and there you are. You're busy as you want to be. So there's a lot of spin-off opportunities that probably represent as much money as the main folks that are doing the drilling. So there's tremendous spin-off, tremendous impact to the economy, including vehicles, trucks, fleets, and then inspections and tires and oil changes, and it just goes on and on. So the impact is quite positive. So with that, we'll have a tour if you have the time to do that. At the risk of repeating myself, I'll just go very quickly. Natural gas drilling in Pennsylvania, there you have it on the slide. We are down in that corner here, and if we zoom in a little bit on that, you'll see these are all the wells that are in the area, and specifically Southpointe is right there. There are 7,000 active wells in Pennsylvania, and of the 7,000 active wells, we have 1,014, I think 15, I just saw one go up this morning, 1,014 wells right here in Washington County. So within driving distance of about 10 minutes, you could probably I'll say 20 minutes, you could visit 1,000 wells. So to give you an idea of the impact of the industry as a whole. This is a breakdown, and we'll give you a printout of this as far as what counties. We are the number 2 county with wells. Number 1 is Bradford with 1,071. We're right behind them with 1,014. So we have quite a few, a very high density of wells. What I'd like to do now is just show you, as soon as I figure out how to get this off of the screen, I would like to show you just a short video about hydraulic fracking. You may have seen a lot of this, but it's a little different on our procedure in Western Pennsylvania than, were you guys in Texas too? Yeah. A little bit different procedure here. I think in contrast, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're more environmentally concerned about the well business. Maybe, Bart, you could address that and just explain maybe the difference between Texas and Pennsylvania in terms of environmental issues. Here's a flip that switch on for the mic here. You probably hold it. Yeah.
Can you hear me okay? Well, first of all, we receive about 38 inches of rainfall a year here in Pennsylvania versus Texas, who probably receives anywhere, from the south to the north, probably an average about 18 inches rainfall. So we do have a lot more rain and runoff and a lot more sediment control to do here. Plus we have a lot of lakes, either man-made or natural. So you can imagine, we're setting up our drill pads in areas where we have large bodies of water. A lot of those bodies of water are culinary. They're potable water sources for the communities. So there's a lot of protection just from the culinary water standpoint that has to be taken in consideration, plus any contamination that you may have of any water body. So there's been instances where we've had to use some technology, some grouting technologies and pre-sealing technologies to just get the pad stable. And that's before we actually grout in any of the casing or any of the preparation for the holes or the wells. So we've done a lot of work in that regard. And I know Texas doesn't have some situations we have here. We actually have mined under this area. So we have to drill through coal seams that have been mined through already, and a lot of different voids and that type of thing. So it's another level of complexity. In fact, it's a very complex situation, and very important that you navigate through those areas too.
Of course, you have the hills and valleys too, which are extreme.
Yes, topography is very extreme.
If you look out this window, it's about 500 feet from the Hilton Hotel down to here. So there's quite a drop. A great ski slope, by the way, around here, which helps. Techniques that might be used here in Western PA. One is the casing that goes down is probably a lot more resilient and a lot heavier built because of our land terrain and so forth. So that'll give you an idea too, is how we do things. Also, I'd like to have Ron mention that we talked about recycling the water when it comes back up. So maybe you could make a comment on some of the techniques that we use that are a little different than what they do in Texas. I'm going to give him the microphone there.
Thank you. Morning to everybody. This is probably the third event I've been to in the past year that has to do with Brazil. So the Brazilians seem to like this part of the world, and we like Brazil. So whether you're looking to invest or whether you're looking to, there's is in the industry today, the nascent shale gas industry is around the world, Brazil, Argentina, South Africa, England, Germany, et cetera, et cetera. The one big issue, there's issues around it, but the one issue that, of course, concerns the community is that of water. What will it do? Will it poison my water? Of course, as we know, water, there's two types of water in the process. There's the production water that comes out, not the production water, but rather flowback water that comes out in the beginning, which was sort of talked about in the slides. And then, of course, the longer term issue, which is a company that I own part of, was dealing with, which was production water. And the key data point on that in those slides was that the wells operate for 20 to 40 years, which means that based upon the hyperbolic curve that the gas comes out at, you're going to get water every single day that's going to be depending on the formation, somewhere in if you're in Marcellus, probably about the 200,000 TDS range. So 4 to 5 times more saline than ocean water, with heavy metals, et cetera, et cetera. It's not something that can be released into the environment. So you have to deal with that. And if I go too long, Don, just hit me. Up. Thank you. And this issue, of course, in the United States is whether it doesn't really matter whether it's here or whether it's in Texas. We'll talk about recycling in a second, but the main issue is when the water comes back, what do you do with it? And typically here in Pennsylvania, the water has been taken out. It's stored in tanks at the well site called production water tanks, and then is disposed of by the operator, either by putting it into a tanker truck and then taking it to a facility to be purified, or taking it to what's known as an underground injection well, or UIC well, which are in different places, some in Pennsylvania, many in Ohio. So you have to truck that in the commercial road system through communities onto the highway, et cetera, to take it there. Number of issues with that. One of the issue is that that's a lot of trucks. When you're talking about, Don mentioned 7,000 wells in Pennsylvania. Well, if you just do an average that, say, a well produces production water in, say, and this is probably low, the 300-gallon or the sort of 1,000-liter range per day, you're talking about, on a daily basis, about 79,000 cubic meters of water being transported, just in Pennsylvania, right? Two things there. My background is systems, large systems. The risk there says something's going to happen. The minute it leaves the pad, something's going to go wrong. The truck's going to turn over, or something's going to happen. That's one issue. The other issue, of course, is one of expense. It costs money to transport that water. So one of the problems that's happened here is that, especially wells in the eastern Marcellus, it costs quite a bit of money to transport that water to be disposed of. So anywhere from $15 to $22 a barrel, which of course is 42 gallons, which is not a lot of water, right?
Let me interrupt you. I can't visualize the way you're measuring that. How many truckloads of water for one well? I can picture that.
Yeah, depending on the salt content, or the solids content, you're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands. It's sort of funny, I was at a Marcellus Shale meeting years ago, and they were talking about the number of wells, and I sort of did the calculation, it was millions of trucks over the course of a number of years. And that causes, the trucks cause a problem here because people complain about the noise and the pollution. In other countries, it's an absolute no-go. I've done some work over in the UK. In the UK, of course, if you've ever been there, it's a village structure. So that's not going to happen. You have to take care of the water at the site it's produced. You can't truck it somewhere. It's impossible. They don't have the road structure to do that. They wouldn't allow it. So there's the issue of environmental safety. There's the issue of cost, especially in the United States, where the cost of gas or what you can sell it for as an operator is so low. That comes into an issue. But there's the third issue, which I think people are starting to wake up to, which is important, is the issue of transparency, which is doing. The good news is that companies like Consol Energy, where Bart is from, when you look at their motto, it's always safety first. So everything is safety, whether it's environmental safety, safety for workers, et cetera. And then it's if you will, a very detailed dive into what the operational costs are. How can we do it for less money while maintaining those safety and always maintain those safety considerations, both for the environment, et cetera. And that is in the United States, that is a very big issue, along with, and it changes from region to region. So as Don mentioned, we're blessed in Pennsylvania that we have a lot of water, right? So the raw material to do fracking. But we also have we have probably one of the best environmental protection schemes as a state goes in the United States. And some of that is due to our former DEP minister, or not minister, but Director Michael Krancer, where it was a good balance between business but solid environmental regulation. In Texas, it's sort of, I don't want to say it goes the other way, but they're not blessed with water. They're in a 6-year drought right now. In places in the Permian Basin, they're running out of water. Now, all sides are pointing at each other, right? Everybody's saying, well, it's the frackers that are doing it. Well, when you actually look at the numbers, it's not. The main consumer of water in Texas is agriculture and recreation, which includes watering lawns, okay? Fracking just gets the bite because they consume a lot of water all at one time in order to frack a well. And the second piece is, of course, on this environmental side, they have an infrastructure where they can move this water, this production water, to underground injection wells cheaply, okay, which means they're pouring the water down the drain. So one of the issues they're going through, and I won't go into the politics of Texas, it's quite Byzantine, but in fact, one of the future president of the United States just got elected to the Texas Land Board, George P. Bush, who's the son of Jeb Bush, the former governor of Florida. That's a launching point for the presidency in the United States. So I'll give you sort of the power of those places. So the issue there is, they can't waste water, but the cost, there's the constant stress between the cost of operations and environmental protection. So my point, sort of the conclusion, just coming to sort of a final point here, is what it's given in the United States is, and this is true around the world. I mean, you're going to face, if you're doing work in Brazil, you're going to face the same issues. It's a great market for the development of new technologies around these environmental problems. So the issue around water, it's not, in the old days it was, how many, it was the Siemens, the General Electrics of the world that sort of owned this marketplace. Well, I gave a presentation in San Antonio about 6 months ago, and it was sort of fascinating because all the same usual suspects were there, all claiming that they had the solution. And I gave the presentation at the end of the day when everybody was just waiting to get to the bar to have a drink. And I made the statement there. I said, look, we're in a $28 billion niche market, right? It's a niche, right? $28 billion. And I said, nobody has a solution, right? Nobody's figured it out yet because it's not a centralized solution. It's probably some type of distributed solution, but at the end of the day, it's the balance between environmental safety and operational cost. And nobody has really, I said my company was working on that, but nobody has really set the bar on that yet. So I said everybody is looking for a portfolio-based solution on this stuff. So it's sort of a good thing for us in that not only do we produce gas here, but because we have a rich research and development community with CMU, Pitt, West Virginia University, we're developing a lot of small companies that provide new technologies both for extraction and environmental remediation, right, in this particular space. And the other great thing about it, of course, is, like I said, it's a huge industry because it's the same thing is going on everywhere around the world, from Australia to South Africa to Europe to here.
So what we did with the Chinese delegates is we actually took them for a plane ride. In fact, if you look in the magazine on page 38, you'll see some pictures of what we accomplished. We had a 8-passenger airplane. I'm a pilot, Dale's a pilot, our president, and a couple other friends of ours are pilots, and we took them all for a flight to actually fly over the well reserves and look at those, the well pads. But it's not just well pads, it's the pipe, it's the infrastructure, it's the plants, everything. So what we're going to do today is we put a camera on the bottom of our airplane, a high-definition camera, and we're going to take a quick flight right now. So if you want to fasten your seatbelts, we'll turn it on. Okay. That's me trying to take off. This is in the high speed forward, so I don't fly that fast. But unless it's a jet, we can stop at any time. This gives you an idea of the terrain over western Pennsylvania. I'm just making a right turn off the airport. We're going to fly over the town of Washington, PA, which is a small community, government-based. It's the county government seat. And this will give you an idea of what the terrain looks like. We're going to come up on a well site, and I had the owner of the land that was, actually, there it is. Whoops, stop right there, huh? That is an aerial view of a well site that's just being completed in an area called 84 PA, and Bill Pollock is the owner of that property. They're actually drilling they've drilled five wells on that pad. And that is the fracking part. So if either of you guys want to talk about there's really 4 phases to drilling. One is you have to find the land, and you have to get a road up to it, get a flat surface, get everything ready for the 18-wheelers that are going to come in. Second is the drilling. And why don't you take it from there? After the drilling, what do we have in this picture here?
Well,
Bart?
just you mentioned you're doing vertical drilling. Are you doing multiple wells on each pad? No. Well, like Don just mentioned, this pad has 5 wells, and there are plans, believe it or not, for companies to go to 50 wells per pad. I was on a pad recently that had 32, and they were mostly oil, not so much heavy hydrocarbon. But in this situation, you see the fracking system set up, and you see a bunch of frac tanks sitting there. And I think in looking at this side, I think they're probably trucking a lot of water in to do the fracking. And then, of course, there's the sand system. There's a sand system for the fracking itself to force the sand into the voids. You can't really see it, but there's probably a couple towers there for the sand system. And the process that Don, the timeline that Don showed, it's quite a, it's quite an involved process for each well. So you multiply it by the number of wells you have on each pad. And before all this happens, there's a lot of environmental containment, like Ron mentioned, that so you don't get any water off the site. And a lot of the drills themselves are self-contained. They reprocess the drill cuttings, so there's no cutting pits. No pits, it's all dried, at least dried to a nominal moisture level and hauled off the property in a solid form. So there's no residual pits or anything that remain.
Since we're up in the air, we're flying over to Southpointe, so I'll just stop the video right there. This is actually the park that you're in now, so you'll be able to see all the growth. For example, these buildings that you're just seeing now weren't even here about 80% of them weren't here 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. So to give you an idea of the growth. Now it's interesting because if you look down here on the right, you'll see the pond. To the right of that is a golf course. So intertwined between all the buildings is a golf course, and there are homes here too. So it's almost like a city, I guess you could say. And we'll just show you. We're going to make a left turn here. That is the hotel on top of the hill you're looking at right there. This, to give you an idea of the growth of the area, I'll stop right here. This is a whole development. There's almost 1,000 new homes that are valued at about $350,000 to $500,000 that are going in. They're sold as quickly as they're built. Okay, all the apartments are sold as quickly as they open up. There's such a housing boom, it's unbelievable, for 2 reasons. One is because we have a migration of people coming in that are staying here for the long term. You don't buy a house if you're here for a year or two. A lot of people think this comes through and leaves like a circus. It doesn't. They're here for 20 to 40 years like the video showed. Those houses there are a part of a Ryan and Heartland home complex. And we're going to fly over to a plant that's over in, here's another housing project. See it on in the center there? This is the Mark West plant that you see here. If either of you 3 guys want to comment on what the Mark West plant is. Go ahead. You're the man.
There's
turn the mic on for him so we get it on video.
There's a transition of shale oil or gas shale deposits that start in this area, basically, which consist of mostly methane, okay, mostly dry gas, and residential, commercial BTU value methane. As you head further to the west towards Ohio, you enter an area of heavy hydrocarbons, ethane, propane, butane, liquids, gas liquids. And Mark West, what they do is they process and compress either the dry gas or the wet gas, and they try to blend up. There's a lot of blending that happens so that, because there's no real market, local market for the ethane or the heavy hydrocarbon, the wet gas. So they try to blend up as much as they can to a higher BTU that's allowable for dry gas. And then the rest of it, Mark West has some pipelines that exit the area for ethane product pipelines. But a lot of it is loaded into rail cars now, in liquid petroleum rail cars. So there's a lot of rail traffic. And that's a whole new business that's opened up for all the rail carriers. They've really done well this year by hauling liquid petroleum products.
So looking at this plant, they're doing 3 things. One, I believe they're storing. Are they?
They don't store much other than the tanks. You see, they may have a little bit of oil They don't really, unless, any tanks you see, any pressurized tanks or vessels or tanks, they don't store a lot. They store most of the area. We store most of the gas in the ground into, voids, and there are many of them in this part of the country.
So this is pretty much a gathering point?
It's a gather, compression, liquefaction, and blending.
And
facility.
then we send it off to the market, which typically could be New York, New Jersey area. Where are we sending it off to? Who's our primary client, for lack of a better word, right now?
The local hubs, like Don just mentioned, the Eastern supply, plus they do have a pipeline that goes all the way to the Netherlands, under the ocean, where they have an exit point there. All the rail goes to the Gulf, where there's some unloading facilities. They're even talking about some export business, which some of the laws in the United States had to change a little bit, because we didn't want our gas going out. We just, we were bringing gas in, so import-export laws had to change a little bit, and some of those have changed. But right now, most of it that can't be put in a pipeline or can't be used right away is exiting with rail cars, and you'll see more and more and more of those.
Are you doing coal mining in your area at all?
No.
Don't mine coal?
No coal in Brazil.
No coal? Uh-huh. Well, Karl, that leaves you off the hook. You don't have to talk about coal today. Aren't you the lucky person? That's interesting. The interesting thing about the coal business, though, maybe you could make some comments there, Karl, about the evolution of the coal business. Not as so much the coal business as how we've been an area that has energy underground.
Okay. Well, the coal business and the gas business are intertwined because of the problems that were mentioned earlier about drilling through the coal seams. In this particular area we have two of the biggest underground mines in the world, Bailey and Inlow Fork. And there, for instance, we came upon a problem with Columbia Gas, where they had their big Majorsville Herd storage field. And this was the first time in this area that anyone ever longwall mined above a fully pressurized gas storage field. And as you can imagine, with something like that, you're encountering injection recovery wells, and where Columbia would have to inject the reservoir to bring the pressure up in the summer, and then it's drawn out over the winter seasons. And then you have a coal company saying, we own the coal rights, coming over top of that reservoir and going to mine through your injection recovery wells. Well, that became a regulatory nightmare, and really it was settled by negotiation between the two companies, that we both said, hey, we have billions of dollars invested in the coal, they have billions invested in the reservoir, and we were able to make an agreement where they would plug certain injection recovery wells as we came, and then we'd mine through them, and then we'd have to re-drill them. They re-drill the wells for them to keep the ability of the storage field to perform.
Now you know why you're lucky not to have coal, right? You've skipped that whole pattern all the way around. So you're in a pretty good situation there.
We have ash.
We have what?
Ash.
Ash. Oh, okay, gotcha.
One of the other things from the legal standpoint, I'm a lawyer also. You notice in this Southpointe area the tremendous growth of law firms here also.
Wonder why.
That law firms from all different states are now coming into this area to capitalize on the complex litigation that goes on with this. As my colleagues have mentioned, for instance, the roads going into the well pads and so forth, you run into these townships that have their own set of zoning regulations, and they try to overstep the boundaries with the state. The state has a set of regulations on what you can do and so forth, and you get into a situation where there's a variance in what the state says and what the township says, and all that has to be litigated. So along with the cost of your wells, the gas companies have a litigation cost that probably goes along with the siting of every well pad.
I guess a key question, if I can interrupt you for a second, is who owns the gas rights in your country? Are they owned by your government or are they privately owned?
But we have concessions.
Concessions.
Concessions from the government.
So
Concessions for 30 years.
so you can buy,
We participate in a bid.
you can bid
Yeah.
for the right to,
You're right to have the concessions. Explore for 30 years.
and that bid's based on, you're gonna bid based on the return on investment for you to move forward in drilling, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to do an assessment, you know, of the risk you have, you know, in drilling this well and finding oil and gas.
Mhm.
And, yeah, there's sometimes, you know, a big dispute, you know, among the companies, you know, for a certain area.
Mhm.
And, you know, in fact, you know, the guys that are responsible for that are here, you know, we have the director of the National Petroleum Agency right beside me here.
Oh, okay. He's a busy man.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But, you know, yeah, that's the process, you know, the government, the federal government owns, you know, the rights, you know, the mineral rights for.
So the
for
federal
everything.
government owns the mineral rights, and you can bid in
They
a
organize it,
auction.
They define, you know, the areas where, you know, they are going to bid.
Like federal
So, not the whole country, I mean, they define, you know.
Federal money.
Now, I bid for the right to explore that particular section. Is it broken down into acreage, I would assume?
Yeah.
And,
Squares, you know, certain acreage, when it's
Yeah.
onshore, it's smaller, when it's offshore, it's bigger.
so they'll allot sections based on what they feel is the density and so forth. But you really don't know what's down there. So when you're
Yeah,
bidding
it's-
this, you're
that's why I
really
said it's risk, because
taking a
it's
risk.
Yeah.
Just, I see.
It consists of two parts. You have to pay something for the government, who pays more.
You pay for the right to bid, then you bid.
You
Yeah.
make a commitment of drilling or seismic. You have a commitment plus a payment. Then they decide.
And also a third commitment that is, you know, the national content. So everything is kind of weighted, you know. The one who wins the bid is the one who has, you know, the best grade based on a weighted factor. That is 40%, you know, the signature bonus that you're gonna give.
Bonus bid.
40% is due to the minimum exploratory program that you're gonna have, and 20% is a certain content that you commit, you know, of services and equipment.
So you're actually
bought in
partners
the-
in a